Have you ever been told it's complicated when getting an explanation about a situation going on in somebody's life? I hear that all the time. If I'm honest, there's some situations in my own life that have been fairly complicated over the years. And when people ask me, I just say, it's complicated because I don't want to talk about it. It's complicated. But is it really? Most of us would love to live a simple life. You know, that hashtag simple life. But over the years, what ends up happening is that there are scenarios and complications in our lives that make things really difficult. And instead of saying, hey, it's simple, we end up having to say, it's complicated. And what's worse is that we've convinced ourselves most of the time that instead of pursuing that simple life we really desire, all that's left is some sort of complicated patchwork of a life because of the decisions that we've made. At least I've told myself that at times. Now, most of the situations in our lives that we would identify to people as it's complicated, like this equation, don't really have anything to do with explanation of what's happening. It has to do with acceptance. In other words, I can explain to you very simply what's going on. I'm not making enough money at my job, so I stole something. My partner's not meeting my needs, so I cheated on them, right? The explanation of it is very simple. It's just that we feel like we have to go into all of the details in order for people to accept the decision that we made. And I can understand that. This equation right here is more than just one equation. There's a bunch of stuff going on. In fact, you can almost say that this is somebody's life. I don't know who it is, and I don't know what all these things represent. I'm no mathematician, don't get me wrong. But this could represent some of the scenarios that people get themselves into in their life. This is the sum total of a life. And let me tell you, nobody can function well if their life looks like this. Now, I want to tell you that over time, certain situations in our lives can end up looking like this equation, super complicated. But they don't happen that way for no reason at all. The truth is, you and I can be renegades sometimes, rebellious, do what we want to do, make it happen the way we want it to happen. And unfortunately, there are rules, there are regulations, not only of God, but of man, that are meant to keep us safe, to keep things flowing right. And the more we obey, the more things get simplified. Disobedience causes variables, causes complications. Every time we disobey, we add another variable to the equation. Obedience simplifies, it makes things easier, it makes it better. And so, obedience is always better, whether you're talking about obeying God or doing what you know you need to do. I had a partner many years ago, he played professional sports. And he said, number one, I have cheated on my spouse. Number two, my girlfriend, who I cheated with, has gotten pregnant. Number three, I forced her to have an abortion. Number four, she is filing a lawsuit against me. Number five, I feel real bad because one of my kids found out about it and now they're asking me about a story that they saw on the internet. Now, if that seems complicated to you, imagine how it seemed to me when he showed up and he said, man, something's going on with me. And I said, what? He said, it's complicated. After I heard that story, I thought to myself, you're right, it is complicated. But the solution at the end was still no different than the solution would have been in the beginning. And that is, he needed to humble himself and tell the truth after the affair. Humble himself and tell the truth after the pregnancy. Humble himself and tell the truth. You get the picture, so forth and so on. So the route to the simple life doesn't really change. Even when we add variables, we have to circle back to that thing that we knew we needed to do in the first place. And I'll get back to that in a second. Now, the children of Israel in the Bible faced the same problem, man. Same thing. 11-day journey to the place God was trying to send them, but it took them 40 years. Why did it take so long? Well, because they disobeyed. They were ungrateful. They questioned leadership. They lacked faith and they created idols. All of those things adding complication after complication after complication. Not their proudest moment. But through all of their problems and dysfunction, our sovereign and loving God still led them back out into the place that He wanted them to be. So we have to ask ourselves this question: how do we uncomplicate an it's complicated situation? I'm glad you asked. Step one, tell yourself the truth. I have to remember that one for me. It's not just tell the truth, because everybody else can see the truth that's happening in my life and in your life. But we have to learn how to tell ourselves the truth. You see, the reason things get complicated sometimes is because we're in the habit of lying to ourselves. We're not accurately appraising what we really see and what's really going on. We're telling some version of a falsehood. We're telling ourselves, it's going to be all right. It's not that bad. This is somebody else's fault. I don't really know how things got to be this way. Listen, us acknowledging where we are is always the first step to making an it's complicated more simple. Israel, as we talked about, finally admitted after people were getting swallowed up in the desert, after they were falling dead, getting bit by scorpions, and all these other things were happening, they finally said, we have sinned against our God, right? They told the truth. They stopped blaming Moses. They stopped talking about Egypt. They stopped saying all these other things that were to blame. And they finally admitted to themselves, it's our fault that we're in this position. We've complicated this thing ourselves. And they decided to actually begin the process of coming back. And that process started with telling the truth. Number two, identify the way out. Yes, that one. Because whenever we're starting trying to get out of a complicated situation, there is one scenario that comes to our mind first. It's like, you could always tell the truth, like in the case of my friend, or you could always give the money back, or you can always break up in this relationship. Like, the most reasonable solution always presents itself first. It's just that we're in the habit of ignoring that one and moving on with the thing that we want to do. But I gotta say, if you want to uncomplicate a situation, yes, it's that one. Identify it and answer it. It's exactly what you know you need to do, is the thing that you need to do. We spend so much effort trying to tell ourselves there's another way, there's got to be something else, there's got to be another way to figure it out. Maybe I can talk to somebody. Listen, variables are being added. But it gets simple when we say to ourselves, I've had enough. Normally, to uncomplicate a complicated situation involves humility. It involves us looking bad to people temporarily so that we can get what we want to get from God, which is more simple life. The Israelites finally got to that place. God talked to them and He said, you've been here in this wilderness way too long, going around this mountain. Now get ready to go into the place that I've told you and face these enemies that you're going to have to face. He took them the long way because He knew they weren't ready to fight. But after 40 years in the desert, God said, this is enough. It's time for you to go and face the very thing you know you need to face. Stop running from it. It's never going to disappear. Listen, the way out to a simple life is never going to change. There's always that one road that we know we need to go down. Man, we can be professionals at avoiding it, and I can understand it. And then the final thing I want to say to you is, don't accept any bailouts. No bailouts. That's how we uncomplicate a situation. You know, I can be the king of shortcuts, trying to find a way around something or another way that's better or easier. Most shortcuts I look for in the natural end up in disaster. I end up going farther and it ends up taking more out of me and costing me more over time than if I had done what I knew I needed to do in the beginning. And that's what I'm saying about uncomplicating things. Don't accept any bailouts. No, not anymore. Do exactly what you know you need to do. The bailouts aren't going to work. People take bailouts like loans, like credit cards, like, hello, guilty, I've done it. And we think it's going to make things easier for us, a shortcut to where we need to go. And it is in the short term. But over the long haul, we eventually have to go back and do what we know we needed to do, is go down that same road. Bailouts always cost more in the end than you thought they would in the beginning. Just like credit cards, just like loans. We get desperate enough, we'll try anything. But the truth is, that's never a good suggestion. It's always best to just do the hard thing first, because in the end, it will certainly cost you more. I got a question for you. Are you ready to get out of an it's complicated situation? I don't think it's that complicated. We can make it that way, but God is faithful if we'll humble ourselves. If you're ready, He's ready. wmorganbates.com. God bless you.